Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Designers at Home. Our guest today is an architect, Elissa Scrafano. And Elissa, at 16 years old, knew that she wanted to be an architect. So we're looking forward to having her join us and explore her journey as an architect and follow her career and her work. And she'll be joining us in a second. She's the principal and founder of Scrafano Architects. They're located in Los Angeles, and the firm has been in business for more than 30 years now. She's also a licensed architect in the states of California, Illinois, and Michigan. And she studied in Rome, Florence, London, and received her bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan. And she has her master's degree in architecture from SCI-Arc in Los Angeles. And we have so many people who are joining us today. This is going to be very fun. Let's see if Elissa's here yet. Not quite yet. So another point that I found very interesting and I want to discuss with her today is her firm consists primarily of women and working mothers. And this is a field that the field of architecture is dominated by men. And so this is, I think, is very notable. And let's see if she's here yet. Elissa Scrafano, here it is. This always takes a minute or two to connect live. There you are.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I was having some technical difficulties getting on.
That's okay. Sometimes this takes forever to get connected, so it's the world of the internet. So nice to have you, Elissa.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
So I was just giving them a little bit of your background, your education, a little bit about your firm. So one of the things that I found so interesting is that that at the age of 16, you knew that you wanted to be an architect. And I was so lost at that age. So how did you know that you wanted to be an architect?
Well, it kind of, well, I knew I wanted to do something that was in the creative industry, and also I had a strong background in math and science. So it's not unusual that architects also excel in math and science and art. So since I was creative and liked all three of those disciplines, I had originally thought I would pursue either automotive design, production design, interior design, not as much graphic design, but those three. So when I was a junior, I started looking at different universities, and I happened to go to University of Michigan they had an art school day at the art school, which composed of interior design, and production design, and graphics. And that was on North Campus, and I loved it, and I was pretty certain that I would just focus in interior design or production design. Right. And then it just was by chance that the architecture school was on the third floor and the art school was on the first and second floor. So I just happened to wander up there, and all of a sudden I saw all these students working. They were working on models, they were drawing buildings, they were working in 3D. I think for me was a big thing because I had always studied art. Growing up, my mother's whole family were artists, so I was always around the making of things.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden I said, wait a minute, this is more interesting to me. And it's kind of funny because we actually do a lot of interior architecture and architecture sort of combined. So I'm sort of in almost full circle now, but I decided I want to be an architect. And then that was my path. I only applied to schools that had architecture programs, and which sort of limited in where I could go for my undergraduate degree. But
so then you came to Los Angeles to study at SCI-Arc, is that right?
Correct. So I did my undergraduate degree, which is a bachelor's of science in architecture at Michigan. Right. So that's a 2-year liberal arts, 2-year architecture. But the first 2 years you take a lot of architecture courses,
Uh-huh.
and then, but you have to stay another 2 years to get your master's. And after the 4-year program, I decided I wanted something a little different. So I was looking at Los Angeles, SCI-Arc, and Columbia were my two kind of, focuses to go for graduate school. And I was accepted at SCI-Arc, and then I moved there in '86. And
So, and you've also taught at SCI-Arc.
yes, I taught model making many years ago. And I taught model making at Woodbury and drafting at UC Irvine. So, but I haven't been teaching in many years. So, but I love it.
Yeah, it is. It's very satisfying, isn't it?
Yes.
So your firm, let me talk first about your background. When you got started, you worked for some very notable firms. You worked for Frank Gehry and Eric Owen Moss and Grinstein Architects. And give us a little impression of what that was like starting out with firms like that.
It was pretty great. I mean, in a big influence on sort of how I work even today and how our office works. So we all collaborate. Most of our team actually went to SCI-Arc. So it's very interesting that like we've kept that sort of spirit of SCI-Arc. But I was very fortunate that one of my professors at SCI-Arc was Susan Narduli, and she taught the model making course. And she also worked at Frank Gehry's office. So within my first semester, she said, hey, do you want to come work at Gehry's office and make models? So I basically worked there 2 days a week and then was in school the rest of the time. And then once I graduated, I had worked on and off at Frank Gehry's office, which was, an amazing experience to kind of, work the way the office used to be in the 80s, which was all models, really fast, gestures of ideas. And then when I graduated, I was my thought was to go back to Gehry's office, but then I actually was offered a job at Eric Moss's office, which was great because he was building so much locally. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted that experience of working on projects that I could walk to, go to the job site, everything you drew in that office. Eric's, most of his work was all in Culver City, and that's where our office was. So you could walk across the street and see.
You just went silent. I think we lost the audio. There. Okay, I'm sorry. We just lost the last comment you made.
Oh, so working at Eric's office was a completely different experience because he was building locally. So by the time I sort of was back at Frank Gehry's office, I mean, he was an international name. So a lot of the projects were being built overseas. And I felt it was important as a woman architect to have the experience where you're actually seeing buildings you've drawn and you've worked on being built. And so that was a wonderful experience. And then I still continued to work with Susan Narduli, through all those years. And then I worked with Susan Narduli and Elissa Grinstein for a couple years. Mm-hmm. And then I worked for a small firm, Landworth Debolske, who was building a large project in Bel Air. So that was on-site experience. So all of that kind of formed, but primarily, I would say Susan Narduli's office formed why I wanted to set up the firm in a way that allowed for a flexible schedule and collaboration. And also, it just led to working with a lot of working moms or men who also want to teach so all those firms gave me
that's how your business began and why you have a company that is predominantly mothers and married women.
Correct. Yes.
So, and do you have many men apply for positions with your firm, or do you find that it's almost exclusively women applying?
No, there's a lot of men that apply, and we've had men interns. I also collaborate a lot with my husband, who's also an architect, Tim Sullivan. So we definitely, it just, I think the office structure kind of is more conducive for working moms, but we've also had working fathers who, it's set up more for a flexible schedule. And we have had other men in our office who wanted to teach 2 days a week. So the structure of the office where it's not a set, you have to be there at 8 a.m. and you have to leave at 6 o'clock. There's a lot of flexibility, and, so it's a certain person who fits well with our team.
And do you find that the field of architecture is still dominated by men? Do you think that women are getting their recognition today, their due recognition in this field?
I do think we've come a very long way, and I think there's, women-led firms like Jeannie Gang, Barbara Bester, well, even Zaha Hadid, that kind of sort of paved the way for women in architecture. I still think we have a long way to go. Grafton Architects is another, it's 2 women partners. So, but it is predominantly male. And I think in architecture schools, it's about 50-50, but the reality is, eventually, if there's a family, a lot of times women are the ones who have to kind of sort of still, are respond, even though it's very equal. I think we've come a long way. I think we have a little longer to go, but
I know in my field of interior design, when I started off in the industry, it was predominantly male, very few women in the field. And today it's been taken over by women. And some of the most successful firms today are run by women. So it's really, things have really changed, and I'm glad to hear that. So, and I'm glad to hear, because I have a lot of young ladies and women ask me, because I talk at UCLA also to the students, and they ask, is there equal opportunity for women in these fields? And how do women work when they have children and so forth? So I think offering an environment that nurtures the career for these type of women is wonderful. Congratulations.
No, and it's great. And I think the world has changed drastically in the last 10 years, but, we have 2 women in our firm, one being Carol Barrett and the other one, Debbie Mackler. Debbie has her own firm now, but, we've worked together for 20 years. And, when Carol was pregnant with the second child, none of the corporate firms would allow a flexible schedule. So it was hard. It's hard for women once they've taken time off to get back into the industry. But, I think now, it's a lot easier. And, there's a lot of ways that, working parents can give back to a firm. It doesn't need to be 80 hours a week.
No. So. And today, a lot of work in all industries, all businesses, is being done on the internet like this. Zoom. In my business, I'd say, a big change with us has been Zoom meetings and how productive and cost effective they are. We no longer have to, and I've talked about this with other people that we've had on the show, instead of the architect and the designer and the landscape architect and the contract, everybody having to fly to a destination or drive to a destination to meet, and the time it takes to coordinate this, it's now we can do these meetings on just a moment's notice on a Zoom call. And it's been very, very productive.
Right. And you also, the meetings then are shorter and concise. I think that Zoom has changed both of our fields. And
very productive.
The world, and I just got off a Zoom meeting an hour ago with a client who lives in San Francisco on a project in Santa Monica. And my husband and I were both on the call, and literally we're getting as much done, and you don't have to travel. I think if it was 100% Zoom, there are things lost because you still need, I don't know how you feel, but in the design world, I feel like you still need to all come together.
Yes.
And you need to brainstorm and collaborate and talk things through. within your team, right?
You're also working with materials. You have stones and fabrics, woods, finishes, all this stuff. And that's very difficult to do virtually. So to do that in person is very important. And I think the thing that I've missed in the last 3 years is the collaboration and just being around people. You know, we are social animals, and so it's nice that we're getting back to that again. So let's talk a little bit about your work, Elissa. And your work's primarily residential, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your work and how you got into residential work, say, as opposed to contract work.
Well, let's see. That's an interesting question, because I think if you were to ask me when I finished SCI-Arc in graduate school, I was like, oh, I want to work on museums and, you know, civic buildings. And I wasn't ever thinking that I'd primarily have residential practice. And we have done a lot of retail, but they're small boutique stores and a couple little restaurants here and there and cafes, which we do welcome. But I think in the really since COVID, I mean, we're primarily residential, but I think all of us really I mean, there's something about residential where you're changing the way people live and the way that they gather as a family, or they gather socially with their friends, and how they use the house, that I think everyone, you know, on our team responds well to that. And, you know, it's really satisfying because you are changing the way
you're changing people's lives, the way they live and function. No, it's very rewarding. So I see behind you a lot of really beautiful photographs. So are these projects that you have worked on or are currently working on?
Yes, most of these are built. We have one project. Let's see if I can turn the camera. We have one project over there to the right that is in schematic design right now. Can you see that one?
Yes.
So the way our team works is we, you know, like most architects or designers, you visit the site, you get inspirations from the site, you look at views, context. We work really intimately with the clients to solve, you know, their needs, where they are now, where they think they'll be in 5 years. Is this a long-term hold that they're going to raise their children and move out in 20 years? Or is it a shorter sort of, maybe they'll be there for 5 years and they may go somewhere else. So all of our projects pretty much have, like, some of them you can see, like, we sort of specialize in, I would say, not entirely, but in mid-century modern, and always the idea of living and being connected to the landscape. So, you know, it's always about how the house sits on the site. And then we love to get into the materials, which is more the interiors part of the project, the millwork. This one down here, we help clients select the tiles, the finishes. See if I can do this so that I don't make everybody nauseous. We love interfacing with, you know, the landscape architects. We actually love working with our general contractors and the clients. So it's a collaboration that's not only us doing the drawings and giving them off to someone. We sort of work to see the project through completion and after. So
it's so exciting for me. I absolutely love construction. So it's great to work on the plans and go through every little detail, make sure everything's getting thought through properly. But to see it actually start taking shape is so thrilling, you know. And then when you get the client to the project and they start seeing it come to life, it's really magic.
It is magic, and I think that's I'm sure you feel the same way, but that's the point where it's so satisfying. And also that look on the client's face when they, you know, it's first framed and they can walk in and they can envision how they're going to live in the space. And
Right.
So
some of your projects are local here, but you also have projects in what, Michigan and Illinois
and Colorado.
and Colorado. So tell us a little bit about one or two of those projects.
Sure. So, well, when I started the firm, it was always located in 2 locations. And most people said to me, you're never going to be able to pull off working in 2 markets. And I think we've been able to pull it off because we have great teams in both places. And, you know, Carol runs the office here in Chicago. I'm in Chicago this week. And we went to undergrad and graduate school together, and now we've worked together for almost 23 years, and now her kids are grown and off to college. But most of our clients, I think in Chicago, come to us because they want a California aesthetic.
Yes.
Which is very interesting. And then I grew up in Michigan, so inadvertently we've worked a lot in Michigan through just people that I know or people here in Chicago that actually have bought places in Michigan and they vacation there. And then Colorado came about, one of our clients. That's the other thing we have. We don't really network a lot. A lot of our work is referral work.
Word of mouth, yes.
Yeah. And we tend to work with the same clients, like 3 or 4 projects. So we have a client that we did a retail project for her in Chicago, and then another retail project, and then 2 of her renovations in Chicago. And then she moved to Boulder. And then we did her house in Boulder. And then now we know all of her friends. And now we have a whole network. And also friends have moved there. So now we're working on their houses. So it's really kind of fun that the practice sort of evolves a little bit, and it's really about the collaboration of continued clients.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's someone who worked with us and they start their own firm and maybe the project's too big for them, so they pull us in to help them. So
Right.
there's a lot of cross-pollination, I find, just even nationally, of people that relocate and then you kind of work with them in a new market, and that's really fun. I don't know if you have that experience or not.
Yeah, no, we do. We have clients that have homes, you know, all over, and it's very exciting because each project is unique and different, and it's so exciting to do something new for them. So I do have one client that pretty much every residence looks very similar to the others, and they like that and they find comfort in that. So it's always interesting because everybody's ideas and needs and living styles are very different. So you're constantly changing and evolving, and I think that's what makes our businesses challenging and interesting.
Right. I
So
totally agree.
do you find that people, say in Michigan or Boulder, wherever you're working, are there needs and requirements pretty much the same, or do they vary because of climate, location, and so forth?
Well, I would say that the needs of our clients are very similar. You know, I think and they also come to us for a certain aesthetic, even though we do all types of design. I'm sure you do too, you know, everything from transitional to ultra modern to, you know, warm contemporary. But the needs, I find, like in the Midwest, you know, a lot of the houses are smaller spaces, they're darker, there's sort of segregated spaces to gather, and most people, they're just changed. Everybody wants to live a little differently, but the same from what they grew up with. So there's a lot of, though I am finding that where everything was really, really open before, people are sort of kind of going back to, I want a space where I could read, or I don't want to be in a big open space all the time. So
you know, that's really interesting because the direction for the last probably, I don't know, maybe 20 years has been to have one great living space that you know, the family functions in a space. And I also just read an article last week about how that is changing, and people want individual spaces today. And I think with people working at home, that has changed the dynamics of how we function and live.
Yeah.
So we're going back to a more traditional concept. You know, it's also interesting. So we're talking about residential work, but in offices, I know down the street here in Beverly Hills is an office building that was converted to a traditional office space. And I think it may have been for William Morris Agency. And several years ago, they gutted the space, and it was this big open, sort of a WeWork space. And it was where everybody was working together. They bring their computers into the lunchroom. Everyone was together. And now in the last 2 years, they've completely changed it again and gone back to the previous arrangement because of COVID and people needing their own spaces. They need privacy. They need separation. So it's funny how, you know, life morphs around things like this that happen.
And flexibility.
And flexibility, yes.
Because bedrooms are now offices, and
Yes.
family rooms are now, you know, I think in allowing flexibility in design, I think is important. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but.
No, you have to be flexible. I have here a gym in sort of in the corner of my living room, because I stopped going to the gym the last 3 years, and so I continue working out here at home. So, and I'm building a gym in my new home that I'm building. So, you know, there's things that that's what's exciting about what we do. We just keep evolving.
Right. And that's the fun of it too.
Yes.
Right. So.
And, you know, you mentioned earlier the California lifestyle, and that's something that a lot of people aspire to, you know, a more casual lifestyle, integrating the indoors and the outdoors. I know that's very important to me. I consider the views out the windows a great piece of art, you know, and depending upon your location and the setting of the home, I mean, I'm sure you orient your spaces in your rooms around what's outside, whether it's a view, the ocean, the mountains, a garden. So,
and I think that's true anywhere, whether, you know, I mean, I find we've done a lot of projects in Chicago that, you know, were loft spaces and opening up to certain views, whether it's, you know, an iconic building. It's taking that idea of the borrowed landscape, which is kind of so Japanese in so many ways also, where, you know, you have a frame and you have a canvas, and, you know, your view is crucial. So
yes,
I think that the site and what is in the surrounding context is so important to incorporate, you know, whether it's the sun, whether it's, you know, water.
So can you tell me what women can you think of in architecture that you have perhaps influenced you, or people that you admire?
Well, I would say women. I love Carmen Pinos's work. She's Spanish. I love her sensitivity to materials and organic shapes. Even though we tend to do more rectilinear shapes, I think I've always been a huge fan of hers. I'd say early in studying, I really liked Gaia Lante, who is from Milan, and she was a trailblazer. You know, I think I don't even know if she's still alive, but she must have passed away. But, you know, she did the Museum d'Orsay in Paris, and just how she created these sort of architectural rooms within that gigantic space.
Right. Yeah.
And I would say there's a lot of other influences like Neutra and A. Quincy Jones, Schindler that we look at a lot.
Right, and those are all sort of mid-century architects. So, and have you ever been, I mean, I know travel's a passion of yours, and you travel, so you see modern architecture, classical architecture. You mentioned just a bit ago about iconic pieces of architecture. Give us an example of what you would consider, since we're here in Los Angeles, iconic pieces of architecture, important pieces, either new or historical.
Los Angeles is such an interesting place because what I love about it is we have so many great architects, whether it's Barbara Bester or Brooke Scarp. I mean, there's a constant new architecture to look at, and then there's the classic modern architecture of, I love the Level House by Neutra. I appreciate Hollyhock for its attention to detail and site. Mm-hmm. We've been fortunate that we've restored a few A. Quincy Jones houses, and we've also worked on a few Neutra restorations, and it's just really great that Los Angeles has this incredible, and then all of the Wallace Neff mm-hmm. projects, and those sort of quintessential California.
Right, all these architects are really coming into their own now. People are recognizing the importance of this work. So, and it's great that they've been preserved. I have a neighbor who's restoring a Neutra house next to me, and they're restoring it as original as Neutra did it when it was built in the 40s. So it's wonderful that there are people doing this today. It's very exciting. So I know you love traveling. So what are some of the places that you enjoy traveling that, are a source of inspiration to you?
That's a great question. Well, I think I live and work to travel, so that is one of my passions. But I would say influences. I mean, some of my favorite places. I love Istanbul. Uh-huh. I love Turkey. I love the confluence of the old, the new, just the textures, the pattern, the color. And then Sicily is one of my absolute favorite places too. And I think
it's wonderful. Yeah.
Probably because I'm Sicilian and I
right.
have an affiliation. Rome is another city I love. I love Japan, Kyoto, the gardens.
Yeah.
And then my husband and I spent some time, and I have spent time in Vietnam, which was mm-hmm. a whole other amazing palette, in Cambodia, mm-hmm. Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia is very exciting, yeah.
Yeah. And it's the light, the play of the colors and the landscape and sort of that.
So when you travel like this, are you constantly photographing things or sketching things? Because I do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I actually brought a sketchbook because I found one, but when I went to Machu Picchu in Peru, just the idea of like how something sits on the landscape and how it reflects the landscape beyond. Mm. But yeah, and I'm fortunate that my husband has the same passion for traveling that I do, and we're constantly researching new and historic buildings to see, constantly taking photographs, sketching, and I seem to do that more when I don't know about you, but when I'm traveling.
Yeah, that's because you have time.
You have time.
There's time when you're home. You're,
right.
You're working full time.
Right.
So your husband's also an architect.
Yes, he is.
This is interesting. So how are your tastes? Do you have similar tastes?
Yes, we do actually. And we collaborate. We probably collaborate on 5 projects a year. So the two of you
were going to build your dream home. Tell us what you'd build.
Let's see. That's a good question. It would definitely be more modern, though I really think it's important at least for me, and I would think for him, that you also have a space that's your own. So I have traveled the world collecting textiles and rugs and different things, which, there's a lot going on in all of those. So I would love a room that's just sort of like Moroccan, Turkish, that's kind of the antithesis of how I like to live, which is more modern and minimal.
Right.
And I would think he also would want a room that is purely him, that was more of a workshop, you know, a sculpture. But we share so many common, you know, ideas of being surrounded by books and our objects. And but it would be probably modern, minimal. We haven't designed it yet, but
Well, I'm sure it's going to happen.
yeah.
You know my ideas of what I want and how I want to live is constantly changing. I could have 10 different houses in 10 different locations, and each one would be different.
I know, and that's the great thing, like working with clients.
That's what we get to do professionally.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. So you have another passion, I understand, which is jazz. Is that right?
Oh, I do like jazz. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you share any of your favorite jazz spots for our friends that are here in Los Angeles?
Oh, you know, I haven't been out to see any music in quite some time. But as far as jazz, I was so fortunate to see Miles Davis in his last performance at the Hollywood Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Which was sort of a life changing experience, I would say. But yes, I love music kind of all different types too. So classical, rock and roll. It's all again like liking the palette of different types of food, different books, traveling to different places.
Yeah, it's great.
So,
it's been so much fun having you on the show, Elissa. Thank you for joining us. It's great to learn a little bit more about you and your career and what you like. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. And it's also, you know, I just want to make a comment that none of any of this work is done solely by me. You know, it requires an amazing team, and I'm very fortunate I have a great team, and we have a lot of fun. I think that, you know, waking up excited to go to work every day because you're working with great people who are talented, and, you know, you're a team.
Well, you know, I have to say that I admire you for that comment, because I feel the same. It's a lot of people in the business of design and architecture. The principals always take credit, and it's all about them. And it really, in my opinion, also, it's a team of people that do it. You and I could not be successful with the collaboration of our associates. So
right.
that was very nice that you credited your team for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mark, so much for having me on the show.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
It was great having Elissa today. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to her. So we'll make an announcement shortly who our next guest is going to be, and I hope you'll join us. And remember that all of our broadcasts are available on, the podcasts are available on Spotify and Apple. And you see any of these videos on Instagram or on YouTube under Mark Weaver and Associates. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the weekend, and we look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.